Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your diet, your workouts, supplements you're taking, not taking, considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's No Filter Q&A with question number 1. Nick, do you think it's beneficial to have a training partner for your workouts? It depends on who that training partner is, okay? So if you have someone that is going to hold you accountable for your workouts, is going to keep your workouts intense, is going to match you set for set, doesn't necessarily have to match you weight for weight, but at least keeps up the intensity in the gym. Like I said, minimum rest periods, really focusing on executing proper form technique, watching your form and technique, then yes, you have a great training partner. And I would say by all means, that's going to be more beneficial to you than training on your own. But if you have someone that is, let's say, a little bit more lackluster in the gym, maybe takes a little bit more rest in between sets, maybe doesn't show up on time for his or her workouts, maybe cancels workouts on you last minute, then that training partner can actually become detrimental to your results. So it's really important that if you are going to train with someone, that you find a person that will match your intensity and that will also help hold you accountable for your workouts. Right. So over the years, I've had a combination of both. I've trained with people and I've trained on my own. Fortunately for me, when I have trained with people, I've had some really good training partners over the years. One of them, my good friend, Dan Murphy, he's moved away now, so we no longer train together, but he was an excellent training partner. We trained for about 5 years together. And of course, Robin Schooley, who I've had on the Q&A in the past, she lives in Toronto now, so unfortunately I don't train with her, but she was another great training partner. So I've had a few more along the way, but those were my two favorite people to train with because they always kept me accountable for my workouts. They always matched my intensity in the gym, and it made me push myself even further than I could on my own. So they were really, I'd say that they were actually a crucial part of when I used to compete in bodybuilding, because they really helped me push myself beyond my limits. Now that I'm, a little bit older, I'm no longer competing in bodybuilding. I train on my own and it just fits my schedule. So I find I don't really need a training partner to hold me accountable for my workouts. I hold myself accountable for my workouts. So I don't find I need one. But I do feel that a good training partner can make a huge difference if you yourself are having a hard time getting yourself to the gym, holding yourself accountable for your own workouts, and also pushing yourself. Because let's face it, there's a lot of people who go to the gym and they spend more time on their phone than they do actually lifting weights. So if you've got a great training partner that's going to say, no, cut that bullshit off. We're going to here to train. Perfect. That is a person you want in your corner. But if you're working with someone who's more of a distraction and is more of a nuisance and is actually demotivating, you don't want that person near you. I mean, I've seen some people in the gym who are just, all they want to do is talk, right? So you have training partners, all they do is talk. That's not someone that's going to help you achieve the results you want to achieve with your health and your physique. I've seen other training partners that, they just don't have that intensity. They're moving a little bit slower. They want to skip on certain exercises. Again, that person is someone you do not want in your workouts because they're going to be an anchor. They're going to hold you back. They're going to hold you down. So you have to choose wisely. And that's why a lot of people like to work with personal trainers, right? Because they know that a personal trainer will push them to the limits. A good personal trainer will push their clients to the absolute limits. A good trainer also knows when to back off. So that usually comes with experience. You know when to push, you know when to back off. And that's why a lot of people hire trainers, because they know they are not going to match that intensity on their own. They know they're not going to practice the proper form and technique or have a second set of eyes on them. So they want to make sure they're doing everything correctly. So again, it really depends on the person you're working with. I don't think it's necessary, especially if you're someone who's self-motivated, you hold yourself accountable and you know that you can train intensely on your own. But I will tell you, from someone who has trained on his own versus someone who has trained with excellent training partners over the years, I prefer having a training partner if I can. With my schedule now, though, it's very hard for me to, have someone train with me because I'm all over the map with my training schedule. So I wouldn't rely on someone to come and train with me whenever I'm available. But if you can match a schedule with someone, they can hold you accountable, match you for intensity in the gym, not necessarily match you for weights in the gym, just match you for intensity. That to me is a perfect combination, and stick with that person because they will help you achieve results that you could never achieve on your own. Okay, question 2. Hi, Nick. I watched your podcast last week and heard that you don't do cardio anymore. My question is, how are you able to stay so lean without doing any cardio? Thank you, Nick. It's not that I don't do any cardio anymore. So my cardio, as I mentioned last week on the show, is walking to and from my gym, which is about a 15-minute walk there, 15-minute back. So I'm doing about 30 minutes of cardio a day. My whole argument was that cardio shouldn't be defined as walking on a treadmill or going onto an elliptical trainer or biking on a stationary bike or joining a spin class. Those are forms of cardio, but those aren't the only forms of cardio. Cardio is essentially just getting your heart rate up, right? And ideally, you want to get that heart rate up for like 20 to 30 minutes. So, and it doesn't have to be in a consistent time period. I know a lot of times people say, well, it has to be for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And it depends on what your goal is. Just for overall good cardiovascular health, just get out there and walk 15 to 30 minutes a day. That should be sufficient. And don't forget too, with my type of job, I'm on my feet for a large period of the day. So I'm walking around quite a bit. So I don't find that I need to do 30 minutes on the treadmill. Now, if you're someone who sits at a desk for the majority of the day and you're driving to and from work, then yeah, you might want to go on a treadmill for about 30 minutes a day just to get your heart rate up. But if you're someone like me who has a fairly active lifestyle to begin with and trains 6-7 days a week with weights and is walking to and from the gym, has a job where I'm on my feet for 80% of the day, then you probably don't need to be doing 30, 45 minutes on a treadmill or on a stationary bike, right? So it's just interesting how people define cardiovascular activity as it has to be on a piece of cardio equipment. It doesn't. It just means getting your heart rate up. That's all it is, getting your heart rate up on a consistent pace for a 15, 30-minute period. Okay. And that should be sufficient. So what I found over the last few years since COVID, I've stopped doing cardio because I just found my body didn't need it. I'm able to stay relatively lean without it. And I find that works for most of my clients who have put on a great deal of muscle over the years as well. Because as I mentioned numerous times on the channel, the more muscle you have, the more calories your body burns in a rested state. So therefore, if you're trying to use cardio to remain lean, that's a bad tactic to use because you're going to have to continually do more and more cardio to stay lean. So it's better to put on more muscle mass so that you're burning more calories in a rested state. So you don't have to do all that cardio, and you can still get away with doing 15 minutes or 30 minutes of a speed walk outside or even a leisurely walk outside just to get your heart rate up. That's all it comes down to. So if you're relying on cardio to constantly burn fat and stay lean, it's a bad strategy to use because you're going to have to constantly rely on that strategy. So it's better to work again smarter, not harder, build more muscle onto your frame so your body will burn more calories in a rested state. And therefore, you're not going to have to do all that crazy cardio. Okay. Still do cardio for your heart. But like I said, there's no reason to go more, in my opinion, more than 30 minutes a day if you're just trying to stay lean. If you're trying to get ready for a bodybuilding or a physique or a bikini fitness competition, different story, obviously, because in that case, you're trying to get your body fat down to single digits for guys and very low double digits for women. So that's a different story. But just for overall health and well-being, fitness, I don't see a reason to do more than 30 minutes a day. Really, there's no reason to. Focus more on the weights, build up the muscle so you burn more calories in the rest of the state. Work smarter, not harder. All right, next question. Nick, what should I be looking for when reading food labels? Like, what is the most important part to watch for? Most important part on a food label to look for is sugar. Okay, so if the food label you are reading contains more than 5 grams of sugar per serving of whatever food you're looking at, put it back or save it for a cheat meal. You have to remember the human body, for men, we don't need more than 30 grams of sugar per day. For women, no more than 25 grams of sugar per day. And that's for the average active female or male. So for the average set entry person who doesn't do any exercise, that sugar intake could be like anywhere from 15 to 20 grams, right? So sugar is the number one culprit you have to look for when reading a food label. If you want to have something for a cheat meal, then save that, whatever that food you're looking at that contains more than 5 grams of sugar, save it for a cheat meal. Okay, but don't consume that on a regular basis. Because if you're consuming something that has 5 grams of sugar, let's say you consume 2 or 3 portions of that, there's 2/3 of your daily sugar intake in that one food group, right? So you have to choose your food wisely. A lot of people, when they read food labels, the first thing they zone in on are the calories and the fat and the carbs. Right? I'm not saying ignore those, for sure. Pay attention to that as well. But the number one thing you should be looking at before you look at any of those is how much sugar is in the food you're consuming. So my rule of thumb is if it contains more than 5 grams of sugar per serving, I put it back on the shelf, or I'll save it for a cheat meal. Okay. The second most important thing you want to look for when you're reading a food label will be the carbohydrates. Okay. So you want to make sure that you're not going to a carbohydrate surplus. I'm not afraid of carbs, but at the same time, if something is, let's say, pasta, and it's for like 35 grams and it's 60 grams of carbs, well, nobody eats, like I mentioned last week, nobody eats 35 grams of pasta. Most people have at least 70 grams. So you're looking at sometimes 100 plus carbs for one serving of pasta. So if your goal is to try to lose weight, probably a food you should be avoiding, right? Or you should be going very, very small in your portions. So I would be looking at the carbohydrates, okay? And as far as fats are concerned, you should be looking at how much saturated fats are in the food that you're consuming, okay? Because fats are not a bad thing. Yes, fats are very calorically dense, 9 calories per gram, but as long as they're healthy fats, that should be okay. I have a lot of clients who are afraid to consume peanut butter when I put it on their nutritional plans. They go, oh, it's 100 calories for a tablespoon. I'm like, right, but this is good fat, right? Very low in saturated fat, very high in healthy fats. Healthy fats will allow you to stay fuller for a longer period of time. So don't be afraid of fats, okay? And I'm not saying be afraid of saturated fats, because the body does need some saturated fats, but rule of thumb, if the food that you're consuming contains more than 3 grams per serving of saturated fats, I'd put it back, okay? And another fat you want to make sure you avoid, and this should go without saying because I've talked about this in the past, are trans fats. Trans fats are not good. Trans fats can be found in things like muffins, donuts, cakes, most pastries. So those are fats we want to avoid. They offer no nutritional value whatsoever. Okay, so if the food you're looking at contains trans fats, I would recommend not consuming that food or saving it for a cheat meal. Okay. Other than that, the calories come down to whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight, but I really don't pay too much attention to calories, because as long as you're looking at your sugar intake, your carb intake, and how much saturated fats are in the foods you're consuming, your calories should say moderately low to moderate level. So they're not going to be too high to begin with. So that's why I don't really pay attention to calories. Okay. So sugar, the number 1 culprit, carbohydrates, the number 2 culprit, and the third and final one, I would say, are the saturated fats. Watch for that. Okay, next question. Nick, which exercise works your butt better, hip thrusts or squats? I would say they both work your butt great. The thing is, barbell back squats, for example, are primarily a quad dominant exercise. However, if you're one of my clients, or you've trained with me in the past, or you've worked with me online, you know that I'm a huge advocate of doing barbell back squats with shoes off and going into what we call a V squat stance. And the reason I have my clients use a V squat stance when they do a barbell back squat is that they incorporate more hamstrings and glutes, because squats are already a quad dominant exercise, as I said. So how do we not necessarily take the quads out of the equation, but how do we balance it with the hamstrings and glutes? Well, you put your stance into a V squat stance, you take your shoes off, you push through your heels, and you try to focus on pushing your weight backwards. That's going to allow you to activate the gluteus maximus along with the hamstrings. So yes, you're still going to feel the squats in your quadriceps, but you're also going to start to feel it more in your hamstrings and glutes. Most people, when they squat, they don't know how to target the glutes and the hamstrings properly. And that's because their stance is usually toes forward, right? And their hip flexors are too tight. So their quads are taking most of the weight on the actual muscle belly. So if you want to work your glutes more efficiently in a squat, take your shoes off, put yourself in a V squat stance. That means that your toes and your knees should be going to the corners of the squat rack. And I promise you, you might have to drop the weight for a few weeks, but you'll notice a huge difference in your glutes and hamstrings. As far as hip thrusts are concerned, I like doing hip thrusts. I usually do hip thrusts with my female clients. I don't really incorporate too much hip thrusts with my male clients. I do find that hip thrusts do work well for isolating the glutes, and I know they help build the glutes. But if you want my personal opinion on this, and it might not be a popular opinion, I do think barbell back squats are the best exercise for building a butt. And the reason I say this is because if you practice the way I said, is to go with a V squat stance and try to activate pushing to your hamstrings and glutes, I think you're going to build a better butt doing that than any other exercise. But why not do both? I mean, barbell hip thrusts are an excellent exercise. I think they're a great exercise. As long as you don't have any lower back issues, I don't think they're a dangerous exercise. One thing I do see is sometimes women loading up that bar way too heavy and not using proper range of motion. So what I like to have my clients do is actually keep the weight relatively light, but keep the reps high. High as in 15 to 20 reps. I also like my clients to use a 1-2 static contraction on the eccentric phase of the movement. And what that'll do is allow you to recruit more muscle fibers for peak contraction. Okay. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, you can go to my online coaching app available at the App Store under Forever Fit Performance. I've got tons of training videos, and I have videos, a tutorial video of me doing hip press, barbell hip press. Okay, if you'd like more information on my online coaching app, you can DM me @fitcosgrove_ on my Instagram, or email me at nick@foreverfitperformance.com. And you can download my coaching app on the App Store, Forever Fit Performance. All right, next question. Okay. Nick, how many calories do you think sex burns, and would you consider it a good workout for fat loss? Not as many calories as you might think. Okay. I've never had an Apple Watch on or tracked my calories when having sex, but I wouldn't use sex as a fat loss exercise. Yes, I mean, you can definitely get a good workout having sex, especially if you're going for a marathon session, like 2-3 hours, and you're building up a good sweat. But I don't think it's I don't think it would be an exercise that I would use to track how many calories I'm burning, because unless you're doing it every day on a consistent level, it's probably not going to be something you're doing on a regular basis, as in, day out, like your workouts, right? You might have, I don't know, sex 3-4 times a week, maybe you have it 5 times a week, but something you're not doing on a regular basis. Okay. And if you are doing it on a regular basis, good for you. But most people aren't. Okay. And then how many times of those the times you're having sex are you doing sex for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 2 hours? Okay. So probably not. So it wouldn't be something that I would be relying on for fat loss. But I mean, sex is excellent for your heart. Sex is excellent for not just your physical health, but your mental health. So I would advocate having sex as much as you possibly can, preferably with the same partner, or at least safe sex if you're having it with multiple partners. But I'm not going to give you a lecture on that. But I don't know how many calories sex burns, because again, it's going to be based on the individual, based on how long you're going for, how rigorous it is. But it wouldn't be something I would rely on to burn fat. Again, go for the speed walks, have sex on top of that. Maybe you'll burn more calories and you'll get leaner faster. Great. But don't rely on that as your primary way to lose weight. Stick to the cardio with the speed walking, stick to your resistance training, and follow a proper nutritional plan. And those 3 components alone should get you to where you want to get, as far as bringing your body fat levels down and bringing your muscle bellies up to more muscle density and increasing your muscle mass. Okay. Nick, I train at 6 a.m. and my coach tells me I need to eat before I train in order to help have enough energy to lift heavier weights. Problem is, I get really nauseous whenever I eat before the gym. Will I not be able to build as much muscle if I lift on an empty stomach? I've had different versions of this question over the years. And when I first started personal training, I was taught that you have to eat before a workout. And I was always told that. And here's the problem. For people like yourself who train at 6 in the morning, a lot of times you're just not hungry, right? And if you're someone who eats, like, say you have your last meal at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, that food is still in you from the night before. I mean, we're looking at less than 12 hours. So chances are you will still have energy from that food that you consumed before you're going to sleep. So I've never been a huge believer that you have to eat before you train, especially if you're someone who trains at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. in the morning. Now, if you're someone who trains at, say, 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you get up at 7 or 8 in the morning, I would suggest having 1 or 2 meals, just because you've been up for a longer period of time, but you're not just getting right out of bed and going to the gym. So I disagree with your coach on this. I don't think it's necessary to consume food before the gym. It really comes down to your metabolism. And in your case, you say you get nauseous more easily. So I would say forgo the meal, eat after your workout, eat within like 30 minutes to an hour after your workout, if you're able to. If you're not, just consume a protein shake. That's something that's light on your stomach. Again, I'm not a huge advocate of protein shakes, but if you're someone who has a slower metabolism and you have a hard time digesting your food either before or after your workout, a protein shake, which is just like a whey isolate protein powder mixed in with some water, usually goes down pretty easily, right? It's just a lot easier for the body to digest. So, and then after an hour or so, you can have some carbohydrates and some fats to help, get your protein sources in solid form. Okay. So it's not something that I think is necessary. I think your coach is wrong. And I would question as to why he or she is telling you that, because again, if it's not, you're not going to build more muscle if you're nauseous, because you're not going to train as intensely. So if you're asking me, will you build more muscle with food in your system? Well, in your case, no, you won't, because you're going to be nauseous. You're going to be fatigued. you'll be lethargic in the gym. The food's going to slow you down. It's not going to offer any benefits whatsoever. So in your case, you might actually perform better on an empty stomach. And as I mentioned numerous times in the past, majority of my clients who train with me before 9 a.m., I would say 90% of them don't eat anything, and they have way better workouts. And I know, like I know that I say to them, you know what, you guys don't need to eat before you work out. There's no reason to, right? And then there's some people like myself who find that a little bit of food, not a lot, but a little bit of food does help. So if I train at like 7 in the morning, I might have half a cup of oats, and that's more than enough for me. And that gets me through the workout. So it really depends on the person, your metabolism, but I wouldn't say it's a white blanket statement and say it's a one size fits all, everyone must eat before a workout, because I think that thinking is very outdated. And I don't fall into that mentality. So you have to find the strategy and the formula that works best for you to get the optimal amount of results with the highest and most effective and intense workout you can possibly do. And as I said, in your case, that might be without food. Okay. Nick, what is your opinion on step counters? Do you use one, and do you recommend using them to your clients? I don't use them. I think step counters are great if they hold you accountable to getting a certain amount of steps per day. So again, this goes back to if you're someone who has an office job and you're sitting for most of the day, you drive to and from work, I think a step counter can be very beneficial, because if you're trying to get, let's say, 10,000 steps in one day, for someone like me, that's easy. I mean, I'm on my feet all day, so that's not difficult at all. It's as I'm recording this, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's the first time I've sat down since 5 a.m. this morning. So I'm on my feet all day. I know for a fact I got well over 10,000 steps in today. But if you're someone who gets up out of bed, goes down to your car, drives to and from work, you're not really getting much, steps in. You're not getting much physical exertion in, not much physical activity in. So you might find having a step counter is good to help hold you accountable. Do I recommend them to my clients? Again, case by case. So if I'm working with someone who I know is walking to and from my gym and is fairly active on their own, no. But if I am working with someone who I know is driving to my gym and is going back to their office, I'll just tell them, it's straight up, in the hour session you're training with me or one of the other trainers, you're not getting all your steps in, you're not moving enough. So I would suggest getting a step counter to help hold you accountable. And you can decide how many steps you need to take per day. You can start off with something like low with, like, say, 2,000, bring yourself to 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, and so on. But I do think they do have some useful tactics to have, only because they will help hold you accountable. So if you're someone who finds that you're not getting enough physical exertion in your day, I think you should be using one. And I think you can use them on your phone now, so it's not that hard. Or if you have an Apple Watch, it's easy to keep track of. So it's not like you have to go out and buy a step counter. And if you're someone like me who's already quite physically active throughout the day, no, I don't think they're necessary. All right. Okay, a few more questions. Nick, does bodybuilding just come down to drugs and genetics? I find it disheartening when I see some of the biggest guys with incredible physiques knowing that I can't achieve their look with my genetics and without lots of steroids. Well, first of all, you shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people. You should be trying to stay in your own lane. Okay. And I don't know why you would be comparing yourself to someone who you know for a fact is on anabolic steroids, if you know they're on anabolic steroids, because again, it's comparing apples and oranges. If you're a natural lifter versus an enhanced lifter, you're going to have very different looks. Okay. Period. So that's why for myself personally, I never tried to compare myself to, let's say, a Ronnie Coleman. It wouldn't make sense. So here's the thing when it comes down to bodybuilding. Yes, bodybuilding does come down to, especially at the elite level, genetics is for sure top number one. People don't like to hear about it, but that's the truth. Now, second wouldn't be drugs, though. Second would be work ethic. When you take two guys, and let's say they're on the exact same drug cycle, but one guy has better genetics and the other guy doesn't have the best genetics, but he has a great work ethic. The guy with better genetics and a good work ethic is always going to beat the guy with the shittier genetics and a good work ethic, right? But the guy who's got great genetics and who's got a shitty work ethic and is lazy in the gym, doesn't follow his or her diet plan, is going to lose towards the guy who's got, or the woman who has not this great genetics, but has that work ethic and is disciplined and on track with her diet. Okay. So the problem is when you take someone who's got genetics, work ethic, and talent, Well, you've got a Michael Jordan, and that's an unbeatable combination. That's why we had Ronnie Coleman, Mr. 8 times Olympia, for 8 years straight, right? I mean, the guy had crazy genetics, but he also had insane work ethic. So when you combine that together, you're not going to beat him. But again, you take someone who doesn't have that same work ethic and those same genetics, they can easily slip to second or third or fourth place, right? I've seen it. As far as the drugs are concerned, the drugs matter, but not as much as you think, because I can tell you right now, when I used to compete, I knew guys who I used to compete against who were doing tons of drugs, and they weren't even placing top 5 because they didn't have the work ethic. They didn't have the genetics. I was beating guys using drugs. Like, again, because I had that work ethic, I was willing to put in the work. So the drugs are only a small component, but the genetics, yes, the genetics are a huge, huge component. If you look at the top Mr. Olympias since the past 30 years, they all had superior genetics. They also all had good work ethics. So that's why they won. And there were a lot of guys who had great work ethic, but they just didn't have those genetics, those muscle bellies, those tying with the small joints. So they didn't place top 5, but they still had good work ethic. So I wouldn't get disheartened when you look at other people and say, oh, I'll never look like that. You don't, first of all, you don't know who's using steroids and who's not. You don't know how much steroids they're using. So the guys that you might be thinking are using tons of steroids might not be using very much at all. I mean, Ronnie Coleman, who I just spoke about, he won, or he didn't win, sorry, he won his pro card as a natural. So he was winning pro shows as a natural. He just didn't start winning the Olympia until he started using steroids. But he was already a genetic freak. So you do have those genetic freaks out there that are natural and they just put on muscle easily, right? So I wouldn't just look at someone and just assume they're on steroids because they've got a great physique. But if you know for a fact someone is on steroids, why are you comparing yourself as a natural lifter to someone who's enhanced? It doesn't make sense. Find someone who is natural that you look up to and say, that's a physique I want to attain. It's a realistic physique that I can attain. And that's what you should be looking for. Okay, so I would really try to focus on staying in your own lane and not paying attention to what other people are doing. And like I said, if you find that you're looking for someone to help motivate you and look at a physique that looks realistically for you to attain as a natural lifter, start looking to other people who you know are natural and say, okay, that's a physique that is realistically attainable. And that's what you should be looking for, okay? But again, for me, I've never really looked at a physique and go, I want to look like that. I always just stay in my own lane and say, okay, what can I do with my genetics, with my age, with my lifestyle, and how far do I want to push this thing? Because honestly, I don't want to be one of those guys who's having heart issues in my 40s because I took too much anabolic steroids in my 20s and 30s, right? So there are risks to these drugs. So I'm not saying don't do them, but at the same time, if you're going to do them intelligently and don't push the envelope. Because as I mentioned last week on the channel, we're seeing a lot of early deaths in bodybuilding right now, and the fitness industry as a whole, women too, people dying in their late 20s, early 30s. That's way too young to be dying of a heart attack, right? So you got to watch yourself. Train smart, train consistently, and remember to practice proper dietary nutrition on a regular basis. Also, when it comes to supplementation, when I'm talking about not the anabolic steroids, I'm talking about your vitamins and your minerals, make sure you're supplementing properly as well, because that can make a whole range of difference when it comes to your results in the gym. Okay. 2 more questions. Hi, Nick. What's your opinion on intermittent fasting for weight loss? I'm thinking about trying this diet in the new year to help me shed about 25 pounds. Thank you. I've spoken about intermittent fasting in the past. I've written a few blogs on it as well. As most people who follow me on a regular basis or train with me know, I am a huge advocate of using intermittent fasting if you are going through, let's say, chemotherapy or radiation, cancer treatments. Because the great thing about intermittent fasting, it helps keep the body in an alkaline state. Cancer can't survive in an alkaline state. So if you are someone who is going through cancer treatments, this is something obviously you want to talk to your doctors about, but I find intermittent fasting to be very beneficial for those people. Now, if your goal is to build muscle and lose fat, unfortunately, intermittent fasting is not an ideal diet plan to follow. Why? Well, what happens when you fast, you risk putting your body in what we call a catabolic state. If your body is in a catabolic state, it has a very hard time building muscle. Not only will it not build muscle, but it will burn muscle. So what you think when you see the weight going down the scale and you get excited and go, wow, I'm losing 3-4 pounds of fat per week doing intermittent fasting, not necessarily. A lot of that weight you're losing is going to be a combination of fat, muscle, and water, okay? And it's going to be mostly water and muscle. So it's not going to be fat. So it's not a good nutritional plan to follow if you're trying to lose fat and build muscle. Another problem with intermittent fasting is you will slow your metabolism down by eating like this. If you're fasting for long periods of time, your metabolism will learn to slow itself down because it knows it's not being fed for a prolonged period of time. So that means it's going to become more difficult for you to lose fat. Okay, so when you stop intermittent fasting, what's going to happen? Now you start eating regularly again. Well, your metabolism is slow. So you're going to put on any fat that you actually lost on that diet plan. So it's not a good nutritional plan to follow if you're trying to build muscle and lose fat. However, it's an excellent diet to follow if you are someone who is going through chemotherapy, if you're going through radiation, any type of cancer treatments. Okay, it can be very beneficial. So it's something you want to talk to your doctors about. But I've done a lot of research on intermittent fasting over the years, and I actually personally think it's a healthy diet. I really do. It's just not an optimal diet to follow if you are trying to build muscle and lose fat. So again, this comes down to what your goals are. In your case, you said you want to lose 25 pounds. I wouldn't take that route. No, I would again go on a macronutrient rotation plan, something like I do with my clients, which is rotate the carbs, fats, and proteins from week to week. Depending on where you're at with your fitness level, maybe add a little bit of cardiovascular activity, maybe not, and throw in your weight training 4 to 5 times a week. You do that on a consistent basis, you're averaging 2 to 3 pounds per week, you should lose that 25 pounds in 6 to 8 weeks, right? It really depends on what you're willing to put in, your fitness level, what you realistically can do in the gym, your lifestyle, and what you do, what you put in your mouth as far as food is concerned, right? So that's what it comes down to. So for fat loss, I wouldn't recommend using intermittent fasting, but from a health standpoint, I think intermittent fasting is an excellent nutritional plan to follow. Yes. All right, last question. Nick, what's your biggest pet peeve? Mine is people sitting on equipment I want to use while staring at their phones. I'm assuming you mean what's my biggest pet peeve in the gym, because I've got a few pet peeves out there, but if you're talking about my biggest pet peeve in the gym, phones, definitely one of them. Fortunately for me, I'm in a private facility, so we don't have to deal with that. I would imagine, though, being in a commercial gym, because I've trained them in the past, waiting for a piece of equipment that you want, and some jackass sitting on their phone, cruising Instagram or playing on TikTok, while sitting on that piece of exercise equipment that you want to use, that would be annoying, yes. But my biggest pet peeve these days are people not cleaning up after themselves. I can't stand it. So what I mean is someone does a barbell back squat and they leave their 45s on each side and they walk away. What the fuck are you doing? Same thing, people not wiping down equipment after they're done and leaving a bunch of sweat on the benches. Same thing, gross. Bring a towel with you or wipe down after use. Obviously, at our facility, we do that for our clients. We don't expect our clients to do that, but if you're training in a commercial gym, it should go without saying that you should be clearing up your weights. Okay, so it's one thing I remind the trainers at my gym too, is it's their responsibility to clear the weights, clean up after themselves. It's not the client's responsibility, it's the trainer's responsibility. The clients are paying for a service, okay? So we don't expect the clients to clean up after themselves, but the trainer should be cleaning up after themselves. So that's my biggest pet peeve, is coming into a gym that's just dirty. I can't stand it, or everything's in disarray, or you can't find things where they're supposed to be. So for example, if the 30-pound dumbbells are not on the 30-pound spot in the rack where they're supposed to be, and they're somewhere else in the gym, it's a pain in the ass to go look for those 30-pound dumbbells. So put things back where they're supposed to be. People say it's type A, but I just say it's doing things the right way. Okay. So that's my biggest pet peeve, is people not cleaning up after themselves in the gym. If you're someone who leaves your shit in the gym, shame on you. And it doesn't matter if you're training at a commercial gym or not, you should clean up after yourself, okay? If you're a personal trainer or coach, you should be cleaning up after your clients. If you're not a professional, you're a jackass, okay? Same thing if you're in a gym, you're a gym member and you don't clean up after yourself, you do a leg press and you leave all the 45s on, and some older lady wants to come use it after you, guess who has to clear those weights? That older lady. Clean up after yourself. Don't be a jackass. That's my biggest gym pet peeve. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Tuesday, December the, what is it today? 19th. Reminder, if you do have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you're taking, not taking, considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com. And as one more reminder, about a week to go before Christmas, our holiday gift cards are available at our downtown Vancouver location or our Burnaby Brentwood location. You can pick up a gift card. All you have to do, come into the gym, let me know what the balance you want on these gift cards are for, and you will have a gift card within 24 hours, okay? If you have any questions with our gift cards, you can email me at nick@foreverfitperformance.com or DM me on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching the channel. Thank you for supporting my business. I will see you all next week. Have a fantastic holiday season, an amazing Christmas day, and enjoy the holiday season. Bye for now.